And welcome back to episode 29 of Run the Terra. I am Grandmaster Dan.
I'm Adam Edelman Munoz.
And I'm Stan Jarzewski.
And today we have some, debate topic. Debate topic, only one. Dovetailing off of our previous discussion last week about Targon being sort of a soup of good cards. And maybe that 2-limit region lock is starting to feel a little arbitrary. You know, maybe we're not going to take it anymore. We want 3 regions, just like in Expeditions. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about maybe why a different mana system is interesting, and how that kind of relates to how Runeterra's mana system works. Let's go and get to the meta.
So we've had some small changes around the meta. Targon as a whole is still kind of falling off into mostly tier 2 decks. Some, peeking their heads in and out of tier 1 as they go. Still just kind of using generic good stuff strategies of whatever pile of Targon cards you want to add to another deck that suits it well. MF Scouts is still kind of the big thing. A few other aggro decks are kind of coming up into the meta too. So we have like a Pirate Burn list that's starting to come out too here, with Nox and good old Bilgewater. Really just adding in a handful of Noxian damage dealers, kind of your usual suspects like Legion Saboteur, your Decimates, Fervor, Precious Pet, the good old Demolitionist, which interestingly enough, I've seen a lot of Demolitionist and a lot less Crimson Aristocrat. I think that's the right one.
That makes a lot of sense to me, though, right? One of those cards got nerfed, the other didn't.
Exactly, yeah. Legion Grenadiers still working just fine, even with its new, bulkier stat line and less direct, or less on-death damage, but I think it's actually getting in more hits now that it's not like it's kind of a decision to decide if you're going to sacrifice your 1/1 to stop the Legion Grenadier from dealing its 3 damage. So I think overall, Grenadier got better with that extra health.
It also helps that Shadow Isles got a new 1 damage removal spell, which pushes the meta towards 2 health units.
That's true.
If Unspeakable Horror hadn't been printed, I think Grenadier would be less exciting than it is right now.
Yeah, it is. 1 damage is running, I don't want to say amok, but is pretty plentiful right now, so that 2 damage threshold is big. I think the most interesting...
Is this the list that's running Jack the Winner?
Yeah, this is the Jack the Winner list.
Because that's a card I underestimated. That card looked kind of interesting, maybe okay, and seeing it in play, that card is surprisingly impressive.
Adam, he's the winner.
I very much agree with that, because I didn't think about him as much as he should, and I don't think we talked about him as much as we should during spoiler season, for mainly one very important reason, is that he is a free card generator. And we've talked about plenty of times on this show that if you can, generate any decent valued card for free, the card generating it gets a lot better. Because there are good discard targets in this game, there are good ways to use anything, and it's almost kind of nice that it makes a fleeting version of the card, because it's also not taking up your hand space.
I think that matters more for less aggressive decks, but still, I see your point.
Absolutely, yeah. In this particular list, that isn't the point, but with the effect of what Jack the Winner does, I think it's good that, the card being fleeting is an advantage, not a disadvantage, overall. And I think an interesting one here to me is Zap Sprayfin being used in an aggro list. This guy has started to really...
it's just Shadow Assassin. If you have any spells in your hand, it's a Shadow Assassin.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. As he kind of has been for a while now. But, a more controlled Shadow Assassin, too, which I think to some degree makes him better, that he is a Shadow Assassin where you kind of know what you're getting. And
that's a good point.
And he's, in this deck, getting a Make It Rain or a Noxian Fervor is a pretty nice thing to get to push through that last little bit of damage with an elusive body. But yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting deck change that's happened here. Everything else is pretty much in the same boat. Some things have moved up and down the lists a little bit. But besides that, most things have stayed pretty consistent since our last check-in on the meta.
Zapdos, Spray Assassin.
Actually, of note, didn't the deck just die? Or did we talk about that last time?
Hey guys, what about that Zapdos Spray Assassin line I just had?
Yeah, a deck did just die recently.
Hey guys.
I don't know if we were around for the...
Is my mic on?
It was good, Dan. But if we spend time appreciating all of your comedy, we just never get
it
through
would
the pod.
just take up. Right, exactly. That's a great point. That's a great point, Adam.
Zephyr Sage has been banned.
Oh, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Just killed the club.
For very fair reason. I've seen a few people being like, why are you deleting combo decks? And it's not the issue that it's a combo deck. It's
we had a hostage situation.
It is a hostage deck, and at Runeterra, they don't negotiate with terrorists, so don't take the hostage. It's just going to nuke everything.
Since we're going to spend this episode trashing on these guys all pod anyways, we might as well spend a moment here saying that this is very easily fixed with a chess clock.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, the chess clock thing is still like, I do like that they want to avoid feel bad wins from just a chess clock invalidates certain infinite combos that, while you are to some degree holding your opponent hostage because they don't get to play for forever, and that is bad game design. I think that's a thing of online UIs with infinite combos, is that they often make it so that your opponent's doing nothing forever, whereas like a live game like Magic, when you've established an infinite combos going off, you can kind of look at your opponent, explain to them what's going on, and then go, oh cool, I lose. And you get a bit more of the, cool, my combo worked, you understand it, I got to explain it, I love it. In this game, you either have to just do it until your opponent gives up, or do it and your opponent might not even realize what's going on until they lose or something weird like that. So every infinite combo is, unfortunately, by the way the system works, a hostage situation. Just sometimes you die at the end of it. You know?
But for the ones where you die at the end, your opponent will eventually pass priority and the game continues. The specific reason this one had to get dealt with, and not the kind of particularly bad meme combos where you draw out your entire deck, or your opponent's entire deck rather, is because this one didn't win.
End.
So you could get to positions where you were going to lose the game, but had control of the infinite combo and could waste infinite time.
Yeah,
right,
but exactly. The thing is,
actually, as we found out from this, 90 minutes, which is the hard capped game timer.
Right, but the chess clock nukes the infinite mill combos as well. Because
only if you can't kill them in time, right? Like if it takes you more than 25 minutes to execute the infinite mill combo, you weren't winning with that deck anyways.
Yeah.
Which honestly, from what I've seen of most infinite mill combos, that's kind of what they do. They take a very long time to go off. Again, I do think they need to do something to get around. I've seen some people say things like, track that they aren't playing the same action over and over again or something like that, but I don't know how exactly they manage that in game. But you're not allowed to override the same unit with the same unit.
All right, here's what we do. All right, we create a very sophisticated machine learning AI, sort of like Hot Dog or Not Hot Dog in Silicon Valley. And we just make it for Zephyr Sage or not Zephyr Sage. And if your opponent's playing not Zephyr Sage, it just automatically makes them lose the game and deletes their account. The end. Yeah. Problem solved.
See, and especially with a deck like this, where the whole thing is that I can take someone hostage. I find it really interesting, the idea of banning combinations of cards and not just cards. So you can't register a deck that has the Zephyr Sage combo in it. Just, you have a digital client, you can just check oh, I want to play Zephyr Sage, I want to play it as it was written because it does X thing really well, that isn't the infinite combo, and the game just says, you cannot have Zephyr Sage and, all the pieces to go infinite with Zephyr Sage in a deck. We're in a digital age.
Exactly, Zephyr Sage and, what's it called, Revitalizing Roar?
Yeah, you can't run a deck with those two cards in it. And there you go. Problem pretty much solved. I mean,
Communicating
besides
that would be hard though, and like I understand they're trying especially for a digital game, you want to keep the UI fairly clean. Like I could understand a tournament doing that, but for casual play, that seems kind of awkward.
I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
I suppose, but I mean, it's no different than other games that have just established ban lists, and it's just as simple as submit deck and spit back your deck is invalid because.
I mean, sure, but the games you're talking about are, I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Magic, they're established games. They didn't have these things in their first 5 years of existence.
Oh, well, I mean, that's also because they were treading the water for what needs to be banned and needs to be done. I mean, again, this would be I guess a new pioneering then or something maybe they can look at going forward. But I think it's a great system, and I'd like to see some card game attempt it to see if you can not kill cards by just banning them out of games. Keep, fringe uses of good cards around while getting rid of their problemsome cases.
Fun fact: Magic has actually toyed with that. They've never done it officially, but a number of Magic R&D members have stated that for certain bannings, they discussed banning specific pairs of cards.
Yeah, which again, I think it's something that they should just look into going forward. Just a really good way of kind of keeping everything in check without banning out entire cards. Just banning decks. I think another thing we kind of said before, don't hurt the card, hurt the deck.
In a different context, but yes, good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get Riot's best people on that, aka us. We'll get back to you next week on it. But going forward, let's start talking about the thing that was racking my mind last night as I was tossing and turning at 6:30 a.m. We were talking last week about Targon. Hey, it's just good cards. They're kind of confused. They're kind of like the teenager at the prom that wants to ask somebody to dance, but they're like, I don't know, they're too cool for me. They're in a different clique. They just don't really know what they're doing. They're awkward. They're in their emo phase. It's not good. Actually, honestly, Targon really is in their emo phase. Have you seen Diana? Anyways, what I thought was, I've liked, or maybe not liked, but accepted this two region lock in the game since its inception. Just kind of accepted it like it was, required. But I started to think, if Targon is just so loosey-goosey, MCR hair flippy, why not let us all do that on ladder forever? I'm thinking of a deck that includes Will of Ionia, Unspeakable Horror, and Thermo Beam. I'm thinking of a deck with 3 Ezreal, 3 Karma, and 16 Nightfall cards, I'm just thinking of really beautiful combinations of stuff. I'm thinking of 40 Teemo, which, by the way, come on. But I really think that maybe this region lock is maybe doesn't need to be there if we're just going to have a full region that's just good stuff. What do you guys think?
So I'll start by making the case for region locking, mostly because it feeds into an argument I want to make later. So region locking is important because while yes, Targon does sometimes look like a good stuff region, your region locked. If you don't region lock, then decks will generally gravitate towards the best combination of cards or the best individual cards across regions. Mm-hmm. So, every control deck will have Mystic Shot, Thermo Beam, Grasp of the Undying, and whatever kill condition is best. So if that's Karma Ezreal or whatever. And so rather than being forced to choose between some subset of those tools, and the same will be true of aggressive decks, right? You'll just have Omen Hawk into the best elusives, into the best burn spells from Noxus in every aggro deck.
Adam, stop. I can only get so wrecked. Please, God.
So
it's so good.
The narrower the region locking system, the more the more you're forced to play different decks, or the more different decks can exist.
Sure, that's fair.
Not exist theoretically, but exist practically, right? You could always play
a tier 3 deck.
Exactly, right? You can always play a worse version of a deck, but if the better version is out there, just the natural way metagames evolve, you will end up playing the better version, or at least most of the latter will.
Yeah.
So region lock kind of protects that versatility of decks. And to some extent, that means what Targon does is it lets you opt into a less strict deck plan, right? If I want to be a controlling deck, I generally want to be Shadow Isles and Piltover's on, because I love Crit Control. But, there are certain pairs that work very well for control or for combo. And what Targon does is it kind of, by having a wide variety of cards that are thematically linked, right? It's easy to tell which cards are Targon cards, even though it's hard to tell what kind of deck you're building with a Targon deck. So by having this kind of wider variety of cards, you're more able to kind of hit that midpoint if you want to, right? Targon lets you opt into the more general deck.
Do we know, is there going to be a hard limit on how many regions are going to be in this game? Do we know that?
They haven't announced it, but we know there's at least one more coming.
Looking at the flavor, is there like a flavor lock? Nice. Is there a flavor lock on the number of regions?
I mean, it's just shitty answer. There are a lot of logical two-region combinations and two-region stories to be told, because stories are told about interaction. There are not a lot of three-region stories being told, in part because a three-region story has, stories that feature multiple regions tend to be longer tales, and League of Legends narrative structure isn't set up for that, right? They don't have, epic odysseys where you can read 100 pages and travel from locale to locale.
Right, okay.
So I think that two regions is kind of a natural number if not necessarily the only one that would work, or, there's nothing locking Legends of Runeterra into two regions, but it is a good, starting place. I don't see a reason to change it.
Yeah, because I feel like coming into Runeterra, I was like, whoa, there's what? It started with what, 6 regions? 7 regions?
6.
6 regions? And I was like, whoa, that's already one more than Magic? That's blasphemy. Like, how are they going to differentiate those 6? And now there's 8, and I'm like, whoa. But also, I don't really know. Maybe like a useful thing would be to nail down what these flavors or what these identities are from like a mechanical perspective. Like, I know Noxus is burn and aggro. I know PNZ is like removal and drawing. Shadow Isles is like killing stuff and also aggro. But it feels like, I think the thing that still hangs me up about the two region lock is that every region has a fair bit of aggro components. Like, maybe not the best, but like still some pretty good aggro components you can slot in. So I don't know. I'm just like, I just want to play with all the good cards. Like, I get it. We need to like keep up deck diversity, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like I just want to be able to go to one region and be like, that's my aggro region. Because
if I might, Dan,
Magic, like red is like, it's the aggro region. It's just like, I'm going to burn face, I'm going to do burn damage. You might pair it with like one other small thing, like a green or something, but it's mostly red.
So I think that what Legends of Runeterra has settled on is, because the vast majority of decks are going to be two region decks, they'll be, I guess you could theoretically put together a one region or mostly one region deck. But most of your decks are going to be two region decks. What Legends has done is kind of made it so there are natural overlaps between two regions. So, for example, your Noxus and your PNZ, that's direct damage, right? If you build a Noxus PZ deck, you're almost certainly trying to do 20 damage to your opponent without ever attacking or blocking.
Right.
Or with minimal attacking and blocking. And then, Shadow Isles and Freljord, well, that's healing and expensive cards, right? Any pair of regions should have a overlap that tells you how to build the deck in the same way a single color does in Magic.
That's,
go ahead.
That's the thing too, though. It's like, one of the big S tier decks right now is hyper aggro Endure, which is in fact Shadow Isles and Freljord. So it's like, I feel like my flavor identity is a little lost. Like they've not sealed in the flavor to my specifications.
Deck, right? That has what, 5 Freljord cards in it?
It has 3 Freljord cards.
It has 3 actually. That's a good point. But then also like Shadow Isles is like, it's all like, isn't old school, don't the OG Run the Terra heads know that we used to say Shadow Isles was the kind of the best card soup region before this too?
Yeah.
So it's like, is every region just good card soup? Like,
I
mean, no, but
ahead,
you know, like,
yeah. So
now there's 2 of them like that.
I think what really ends up happening with this kind of build, especially as I'm kind of looking back through all of Targon's listing, is that I think what really ends up happening here is it's more that you just get to like, you're almost just saying, I want to play aggro, but I want to play this skin of aggro. I want my aggro to be with pirates. I want to be my aggro to be with one bird that's very cold, or a thing that gets bigger when everything dies. I mean, like,
which is fair, yeah. And that's a reasonable distinction, and I think that distinction is definitely borne out between like a Bilgewater aggro versus a Shadow Isles aggro for sure. So
yeah.
That's a fair point, yeah.
And again, while they might, like, Bilgewater and Shadow Isles do also play very, very differently, even amongst the 2 aggro decks. Like, their priorities are different. But to some extent, even if you think of them as just, hey, this is an aggro deck, I'm going to go face with my creatures just like I am in Bilgewater. I mean, again, at least you have the differentiation of, well, I got to do it with pirates, and I like pirates, versus I got to do it with spooky creatures, and I like spooky creatures. Like, there is merit to that, as silly as it is, and, you know, you should never just build a card game where you have 4 versions of the same card with a different skin.
Yeah, but there's definitely merit to that, even from an outside perspective. If you don't really know card games that well, yeah. But I mean, even then, they do mechanically play different.
They do.
A more skilled player, yeah.
Yeah. But again, like, I think that's kind of nice that you can, to some extent, too, just, like, you can jam any 2 regions together and make an aggro deck. You just might not be making the best one. I mean, you know, as we just stated, so within you know, top tier decks, we have 1, 2, 3 aggro decks, 2 of them using Bilgewater, 1 of them using Shadow Isles and Freljord, and then the 2 are flipping between Demacia and Noxus as they're pairing for aggro. So, and I think, you know, as you go further down, you find like Shadow Isles and Noxus for aggro, and then again, like, even there's even now a Demacia and Ionia aggro deck in Tempo Lulu, where it's just like, it's more just opening up doors to where, like, this is the 2 things I want to jam together to make aggro, or these are the 2 things I want to jam together to be a control deck. So I think as we keep going, and probably if we took a look back and like re-dived into Demacia with all the new added stuff, I think everything's kind of getting to good stuff soup regions to some extent. And it's just literally letting you pick what flavor of what you want for the deck you want to build.
Yeah, which is true. I guess that then brings it to, so I guess at that point, if everything is just good soup, I guess it's a matter of making sure the goodest soups aren't the only thing you play.
Yeah.
I think that the better they differentiate the regions, the more that will be true. I mean, I've talked about it a bit when we talk about nerfs. If you nerf what makes cards unique and powerful, then you're gonna weaken the identity of the region to the point where they start looking more like each other, right?
Right.
Which I guess is my main problem. I guess I don't really have a problem with the region lock then. I guess my main issue is, I know what Noxus is about. I know what Demacia is about. I know what P&Z is about. Then there's like 3 or 4. There's like 3 maybe where I'm like, it's kind of iffy, and then there's 2 where I'm just like, y'all are definitely just good stuff in here.
I'm pretty sure that Shadow Isles is about death, right? Nearly every card in Shadow Isles is a unit that wants to die, a unit, something that kills an opposing unit, or something that kills one of your own units.
Right. I guess I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, because basically it's just black and actually Shadow Eyes is just black and magic.
Oh yeah.
I guess so that's fair. I think for me it's like it's still like Bilge is a little awkward as far as its thing, and I guess it's mainly Bilge and Targon's because they're the newest. But they still feel kind of loose. And Failure has always felt a little bit like it is like the thick creatures. I think we've talked about this before. It's like it is like the big creatures, the expensive stuff, but
also Poros and a bunch of other nonsense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think. I guess I just want like really big signposts for everything. That's like this is what you're doing in this set or in this region.
I think we may eventually get to a point where so early Legends has had and still kind of has, we're still in the early days of this game, a bit of a problem where there's a small card pool, so the power level is a bit
that's fair.
Hard to control, right? I mean, clearly the classic burn aggro deck that was Noxus plus your pick of 3 other regions was a bit dangerous, scary, and a bit too powerful. And the problem was, I think that they correctly identified a way of weakening the deck so that it would be, not just the best thing to do, but as a kind of consequence, they also made it so that the region was less different from other regions.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll eventually get to a point, as the card pool expands, where they can maybe add some power back into that deck, maybe revert some of those nerfs. Maybe Shadow Isles could get the same, Black Spirit too.
Deny to 3.
Where we can kind of start strengthening the unique aspects of each region again, but with a small card pool, strong unique aspects make regions kind of the best thing to do, right?
Lopsided.
Remember when Shadow Assassin was in, what was it, literally 55% of all decks?
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
Like, it was something crazy. I don't remember the exact numbers, and someone who is listening to this is going to know the numbers and think I sound like an idiot. But the point remains,
hit us with the
the point remains that, that was one card, and it wasn't that much stronger than the rest of the cards in the game, but it was enough to just utterly dominate the metagame. And, as the card pool expands and as regions get more unique cards and more different things to do, and, including a few more new powerful cards, I think we'll eventually get to a point where they can start sharpening up those differences by adding power back into unique things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely would love to see that. I don't know if I necessarily missed the Deny at 3 and I guess the Noxus days, but I do kind of miss I feel like in some ways I just know Noxus is the aggro region just because of that old history. I mean, yes, it is still mostly the aggro region, but still there's a bunch of top end stuff. But yeah, I would definitely like to see a little more differentiation, and just let's just start dumping in hundreds of cards at once. Screw it. Let's just double the card pool next time.
I think what you said about signposting though is really important. I think less about necessarily diversifying regions as creating more signposty cards. So for instance, the biggest ones I think of right now, because there honestly are only a few truly signposty cards in Legends of Runeterra. There's They Who Endure. They Who Endure tells you exactly what your deck is going to do.
Yeah, that's true.
There is Terra. Terra tells you exactly what your deck is going to do. And then, there's only... I'm trying to think of what in the meta is even
I think there actually are I think there's actually... Let me look this word up really quick, make sure I'm using it correctly. Let's see. There is the inverse of a dearth of a signpost. I think the issue is that they're signposts, but they're just they don't have the town built around them. You go to the destination and there's nothing there. It's a ghost city. There's Jagged Taskmaster. It's an epic that says grant 1-cost allies everywhere +1/+0. This is the whole thing they were talking about. All those epics are they're trying to make them cooler and hipper, and it's no, they're really hip. It's just the tournament structure and a lot of the way the game breaks down is just not built around them.
Yeah.
Because you can't sideboard in really anything, because there's no best of 3 right now or anything like that. These cards just aren't going to be used except in expeditions.
Right. And I think on top of that too, just a lot of the epics are very weak. Epics do not really see play in decks. And there, I guess actually, you're right, there
except for
are a
the
lot of signposty
obvious
epics.
great
Yeah,
ones.
there's a ton.
Nobody plays those decks.
There's actually a huge amount of them. The only ones that really stand out to me are the Sea Monster Deep one, and that one was done very well. Like that was a signpost that was very well done. Obviously,
actually,
Mentor of the Stones kind of pairs well with the Terra stuff. I mean, shoot, that Encroaching Shadows deck is almost a deck exclusively because of Encroaching Shadows. I mean, I guess the Stalking Shadows card's also really good. But, yeah, it feels like they do know what they want you to do. They just... I still keep coming back to this sideboard tournament thing, or, like, sideboard structure, maybe best of 3. I think I'd like to see more of best of 3 on ladder. I mean,
So
personally.
what you're telling me is that every last one of our previous complaints is also all of the other complaints that we have.
Yeah, it's all rolling into one big snowball avalanche. Sort of like a avalanche of Poros? Is that what it is? What's that card?
Of Poros.
Poro Storm? Heart of the Fluffed. Just like a Heart of the Fluffed. Wrapping up every single one of our Poro-based complaints. Yeah, you know what? This is it, guys. We're doing it. Sideboard tournament. It's happening. I'm calling it now.
I think there's a bit of a lot of this is a result of their design decisions, right? So this is, we talk about the tournament structure and all that, so that you can utilize these kind of unique and interesting cards. But a lot of the issue is that, as we mentioned, you're locked to 2 regions, and you kind of have to follow the signposts for your 2-region pairing, right? I can do, I can do, I don't know, let's see, Piltover and Zon plus Noxus Control. I guess that's Swain Ezreal. That kind of works.
That's a deck. That's a real
That's
deck.
Swain it's all right.
Maybe that was a poor example.
Oh wait, that's not a real deck anymore. Sorry,
let's do Piltover's on Freljord, right? Piltover's on and Freljord. What the signpost pairing for those guys is there one? It's like
it was those. What was those?
It was Elnuks way back in the day.
Elnuks, Sedge.
Yeah,
I've seen like Ezreal Frostbite. There's not a lot there, right? So actually, it's a better example because you're lacking a signpost, right? So you don't have a signpost, you can't really follow it, and so the deck just kind of fails to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it exclusively exists off the back of cards that had insane, RNG variants that were really good.
And you're never incentivized to try to make it exist because you don't have that signpost, right? You don't have something that tells you, hey, here, come do this. Which I think is...
Yeah.
I mean, it's a result of this kind of 2-region locked mindset, right? Which is, again, something they have to do because there's no other way to create a diversity of decks. But if you have something like... today, I don't know. Let's talk about Magic's mana system because that's where I want to head with this, anyways. If you have something like Magic's mana system, right? If you have you have your signpost, and your signpost is usually 1 color, sometimes 2 colors. So sometimes you have a signpost that works with, that would be your kind of 2-region signpost like Yasuo, and sometimes you just have a good card like Sedge. And if you want to enable it, you have a bunch of options, right? And these options come with trade-offs. So you could have this mono Freljord deck with, that guarantees that you can always play your Sedge every time and all the supporting cards. You could have the kind of Freljord and one other color deck, so you could have Sedge Bilgewater or Freljord Bilgewater with Sedge. But maybe like the best cards to enable Sedge are spread across multiple regions. At which point, Magic has the option to go into multiple colors, and there's an inherent trade-off, right? You don't have to balance that. You don't have to worry that will just take over the game, because in taking on that 3rd region, that 3rd color, you weaken your deck's mana, right? You introduce inconsistency to get raw power. And that kind of consistency power trade-off is a huge benefit of Magic's mana system, right? You get to when you words are hard sometimes. Rather than making everything have to be perfectly consistent, so everything has to be the same power, you open up the options of having power and consistency be kind of this. The product of power and consistency has to be the same, but you get to trade one for the other, right? You get to make that decision.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to have that in a game with region locking and a perfect mana system. And by perfect mana system, I mean a system where your mana is perfectly consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I do wonder, like, what if you, I mean, just for signposting things for these two regions, if you start doing things like, I guess what I was kind of thinking of while you're talking about that is like looking at Magic's two-colored cards, like your red-black signposts that say, oh, cool, I'm going to play a red-black deck because this effect works really well with these things, is to potentially start having cards that are like, they wouldn't necessarily be two-region cards because there'd be no necessarily purpose behind that. I guess they could be. They could be cards that just, like, you play this card, you are locked into
I would
this...
kind of like that.
Yeah, you're already locked in this two-region deck. But something like that, or having something like cards that are labeled as, like, Traveler, as, like, probably either part of their name text or something, whatever, but gives you a reason to play one region with another. So, like, in Freljord, you might have your, like, P&Z Traveler card, and it gives you a reason to play Freljord with P&Z again.
You could also do like a reverse allegiance type thing. Not necessarily like you had to figure out some way to do it, but you could do some type of reverse allegiance thing where if it sees that you're playing that other region, then you get that
advantage.
So it kind of lets you still have a card locked to a single region, but also
that's actually
playable.
Yep.
I think that'd be interesting because that definitely would let them push the power level on cards similar to how they push power level on allegiance cards currently, because they know that you're pretty much locking yourself to one region doing so.
That's kind of interesting. I was thinking more building cards that have more natural options to be cross-region synergistic, especially with more than one region.
Yeah.
Right, like the Yasuos of the world are fun. I like that Yasuo has a native two-region home with between Noxus and Ionia. But I think it would be nice if there were either an incentive to play Yasuo in a third region, so that you could have more decks that involve him, or alternately, more cards that do a similar thing to Yasuo, where they have like a natural home in 2 to 3 regions. Terra is a good example of this, right? Where your support cards, you can either play just a ton of support cards, or you can pair him with a specific set of supports from Ionia or Demacia. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
I think cards like Gangplank also work like that. They can serve as the top end to an aggro or the middle of a mid range. And just having more cards like that.
Sometimes sometimes the survival of a control. Astralis is still mid range. Riptide Rex is a mid range card. You need to always remember that. Just because it's expensive, it's still a mid range card.
Yeah, I mean, cost is not the same as it is in Magic, the way we're used to it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's a control finisher.
I feel like the game just needs more Johnny cards, or it needs to reward Johnnies more, because I definitely feel like I'm a bit of a Johnny. I don't feel rewarded very heavily playing this game when it comes to deck building, at least. Like, I'll see a bunch of cards, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, oh, I'd love to play, I don't know, Shiraza with Kato, but it's like, Kato's good by himself, but like the Wombo combo is not really enabled super well.
Yeah.
Because it's just gonna get excited, or any various bunch of removal spells, and there's not really any way to like super wombo it in. I mean, I guess now I could pair it with Targon for maybe Spell Shield, but I don't know.
Yeah, that is another tricky thing of specifically with the flavor of this game, is so much of the power is pumped into the creatures, and so much of the combo potential and everything is pumped into creatures doing their things, that you really are like combos isn't even the best thing to be doing in this game. It's just things being synergistic. Like you just want value. You don't want to Johnny off that much because
hopefully with 4 health.
Yeah,
that's true. Only with 4 health, yeah.
Yep. And I mean that's
or even something like Legion Veteran. I mean, look at that. It's a 4-mana 4/5 that anytime another ally survives, grant +1/+0. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. Or actually, to me, the best example would be something like Von Yip and Taskmaster, where it's like you have these 2 cards that are heavily synergistic that are like ready to roll, but they're not even cracking anything close to the meta. Whereas, there's a ton of other aggro decks that are, and like that's fine, but it's like I just want to see support for some of these weird cards. Like, I'm not seeing much for Silent Shadows here. I can maybe envision a world where you're playing a bunch of those Phantom Pranksters and Neverglade Wardens or whatever, getting a bunch of drain effects, pinging every turn with a 3/1 elusive, but it's just not quite there.
Yeah, it's really only there for like right now it's getting play in the.
It's just there to taunt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting play in that Shadow the
weird
ephemeral combo deck.
Yeah, which again is even just like a weird calling that a combo deck is also kind of weird because it's really just a super math tempo deck. I would really call it. Like I wouldn't really call it a combo so much as I just call it advanced counting.
Right, but it is scratching that itch of like. This thing I'm doing is really dumb and weird, but it might work. It's like that's the kind of A-team mentality that I want in my deck building.
I do think that this deck is the it is the definition, or not the definition, but it is like the closest thing you will ever get to the my grandfather's deck has no bad cards moment of summoning Exodia at literally the last second to win the game, because playing this deck is it's very difficult. Like it is definitely rewarding to win with because you have to work for your games with this deck. But it also if you're playing against anyone competent, you're not killing them in the safest of circumstances. You're about dead when you kill them. You're no more than a turn away from losing the game whenever this deck finishes out.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, but it's just not enough of a payoff.
No, yeah, absolutely. It also isn't like the true Johnny combo playoff. It's more.
Right.
It really is just like the ha gotcha, sort of. I don't know. It is a very different feeling than comboing off.
Yeah.
Our Ezreal does let you combo off. In fact, pretty much any Ezreal deck lets you combo off, but that's still 1 card.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably explains also why that's the deck I've played the most in the entirety of Runeterra.
I mean,
is because it's the closest thing I get to just like Storm.
Yeah, Infinite Mill is currently the truest combo off deck.
Right.
And that's that's a whole nother thing. And again, the other thing about the way that this game's system works is that your comboing off feels really wonky when it's just like play a unit, opponent ropes you, play a unit, opponent ropes you, or things like that, where you can't really just like go, you're dead. It's a much more clunky. Infinite combos in this game are clunky as all hell to navigate through, just by the fact that it's just like constantly passing, back to your opponent of like, okay, you gonna do anything else before I keep killing you?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean that's really where I stand. I think we have to get our sideboard tournament going at some point. We're gonna have to figure out the specifics of that, because I'm very curious to try this game with a 1 deck going in strat, and then having, I'm guessing it'd be like a 10-card sideboard.
Yeah, we should
We're gonna do something similar to Magic.
We should just start testing it amongst ourselves at least for the next little bit.
Yeah,
that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, because I think it'd be interesting to see what wins out, and even just having a best of 3. I mean, honestly, even a best of 3 without a sideboard, I would like to see. But a best of 3 with a sideboard, I think would be a lot more fun.
Yeah.
I guess I've never just been super interested in a conquest type system. especially when there's just all these cool cards that aren't getting used.
Yeah, I do think like sideboard, like there are so many cards that are specifically designed for sideboarding, and it's insane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they're just
Like
not there.
Hush is the perfect sideboard card.
Yeah.
It is the perfect sideboard
To
card.
be fair,
Like, yes,
you're
it's
so
still
forced to play to the board that Hush is decent main deck.
Yeah, no, it is also a very good main deck, but it feels like the kind of card that was made for sideboard. You know what I'm
Hush
saying?
at 4 is a great sideboard card.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, also, what's the new Passage Unearned or whatever that's called? The
Yep.
new Shadow Isles card?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
A card just straight up only designed to be like. How do you make
Yeah,
that
I
card?
would-
You're like, yeah, we're not going to do, tournaments are all going to be Conquest. Let's not sideboard.
I would never put that in a main deck of any deck.
No.
In
I
fairness
can't- I can't
to Riot here, they haven't hosted any tournaments, actually.
That's
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
That's
They've
true.
done nothing. Kespa did the
They really should get on that.
first
thing, too.
Conquest tournament in Korea, and then it was, who was doing it? Twitch did a bunch of Conquest tournaments in the US.
Raffle type stuff. Yeah.
And like some online
Yeah.
organizations as well.
I would love to see Riot really get into it and like set the tone, and maybe even have two different types, like Conquest versus Sideboard, because I do feel like they're just completely going off the back of like, this is Hearthstone killer, we're gonna do exactly like Hearthstone and pull all the Hearthstone people in, which is fine, but I'd like to see a little bit of mix up, because it feels like the designers are completely separated from the decision makers on this, because the designers are definitely setting up a sideboard type system. I feel like that, or I'm just schizophrenically seeing patterns where they're not there.
So I think it's possible that the designers are. I mean, because Hearthstone also has sideboard cards that see no play because they're sideboard cards in a non-sideboard format. I think part of it is kind of, I guess, safety valve
valve
system, right?
Yeah,
You're not designing
yeah.
sideboard cards. You're designing cards that you can just jam 3 of in a deck to not lose to a
Yeah.
like disastrously powerful thing.
That's fair.
The problem, of course, is that in Hearthstone, those are mostly neutral cards that any deck can use, and there's no such thing in Legends.
Yeah.
Which kind of hurts Legends in that regard, right? If the Undying deck is the best deck in the game, your Noxus
gotta go to Shadow
Bilgewater
Isles.
your Noxus Bilgewater aggro deck can't beat it by
Yeah.
sideboarding.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Although maybe it could by, I don't know, going underneath it somehow.
And now we're back to
Changing
reasons
into
Magic is
elusive?
good, right? You've only got
Yeah.
Magic has colorless cards, but also has only 5 regions. So
Yeah.
if you are into a third is a mild stretch, and the odds that you have a tool in your region to deal with what you need is higher because their tools are better split between the regions.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They should just make a region called Sideboard. They should completely signal to us that they're paying attention, they're listening, they know what we need. So yeah, Riot game designers, make a region called Sideboard, and we'll know you're fans of the pod, friends of the pod, you know. Yeah, do you guys have anything else to offer on this topic?
This is a very good game, and these are small gripes that we're spending an entire episode on because it's fun.
Hey, content, baby, you gotta do it.
That's
Yep.
true.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would have to close with would be Black Spirit of 2, Playful Trickster to 3, honestly.
Okay.
If you're gonna make me remove a attacking ally, I better get an advantage more than having to pay that extra mana. That's a really big stinker. I understand it technically should be a benefit for me to be able to do that, but it rarely is, at least when I played it in Expeditions.
I mean, especially if they're going to nerf it and not let it work with Tarek.
It doesn't work with Terra?
They announced it in the patch notes because, like, as written, it would allow infinite attacks with Tarek, which I'm okay with.
I'm okay with that. That sounds great. Again,
But
stop
they
hurting the Johnnies.
decided that was not what they wanted in their game, so it
Right.
officially does not work with Tarek.
All right, Stan, we're gonna have to airdrop you back into Ride HQ. We
Yep.
gotta fix some stuff over there.
Uh,
Heads gotta roll, dude. This is
Why
getting ridiculous.
would they remove an infinite attack combo from the game? That seems dumb.
Yeah, that seems like really fun to me.
Yeah, come on, dude.
I love attacking and then doing it about 600 more times.
I think the problem was that it was a 2-card combo that won the game on the spot. If you had a unit in play, and the cards cost a total of 7 mana. 8.
Is Diana an elf? Is she featured on the Hush card?
No, I don't think that's Diana. Let me check.
Okay. No, I think it's Soraka, right?
I could be right. I'm gonna look up Hush.
Because it's got her quote on it. Although she doesn't look...
that is most definitely Soraka.
Okay, so that's probably going to be her champion card, by the way.
It could be. It's possible that she'll get another card for
Holy
her own.
Kenobi. What's her kind of deal in LoL?
Soraka is a celestial that descended to Earth to kind of live a more earthly life to help people more directly instead of kind of
what does she do
distant
mechanically,
influence. It makes her somewhat more mortal, but she is, benevolent and friendly, and she's a healer. She's the most healery healer in the entirety of League of Legends.
Does she have a silence?
She does. She silences people so that they do not kill her, the champion she's supporting.
Something tells me this is going to be her champion card.
I could believe it.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting if they revealed the spell before the champion. That's very interesting.
It's the kind of cutesy thing I would expect from them.
Yeah.
It's possible their champion card's just a healing spell, though.
That's true too. I wouldn't be surprised by either, but I mean the fact that she's on it and they haven't mentioned that they technically haven't mentioned that she's in the game yet, as far as I know. That's just been data mining.
They have not officially announced it, but yeah, data mining don't lie.
Right, exactly. That'll be interesting to watch for, because I think that'd be a really nasty card to have on a champion. It'd be cool. It's sort of like how a lot of the reason why I think Diana is even tier 2. It's just the fact that when you have 2 Dianas in hand, it's just like, oh no, I win. It's hard to beat a 4/3 challenger quick attack that draws cards every time and also shuffles it back in. That's really nasty. But yeah, I think that was a good discussion of region locking. I think I agree with Adam. It's a great game. Just, I want to see sideboard tournaments. We're going to start bringing them to you.
So what's our final verdict? Just like a 1-sentence summary of what do we want from region locking? Stan started us off.
Black Spirited 2.
I want good spicy flavors.
All right, Dan, what about you?
Yeah, I just want to see a sideboard based best of 3 sideboard, because I think what we have here is perfect.
And I want a complete overhaul of the system to include inconsistent mana. Okay, no, I'm kidding. The Legends of Runeterra is its own game. We don't need a complete overhaul. What I would like to see is more, I guess the word is incentive, more flexibility to go more than one region, or more than 2, or to have a kind of set of regions that work well together, and you can pick any pair of them.
Spheres of influence amongst regions.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. Right. So yeah. I want cards that work well in 2 or 3 different pairs of regions.
Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, did you guys know there's a card called Giddy Sparkeologist?
Yeah.
Sparkologist.
I did
That's
know
awesome.
that card existed, but
that's very cool.
I'm sorry, what?
There's a card called Giddy Sparkologist.
Mm-hmm.
They somehow didn't reveal that in the spoilers, as far as I know, because I would have been all over that. Love this card.
What? This card exists?
Yeah. This looks like Zoe, but just with white hair. It looks like Zoe had an emo phase. Or I guess it's Nightfall Zoe. I don't know.
I think that it's maybe the cult of Zoe. Who knows?
Yeah, it's all of Zoe's fan base.
Nice. Zoe 101, That's what we're going back
yeah,
to.
dude. Zoe 203.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna do it for us here. We're gonna be testing a sideboard. We're gonna start testing best of 3s and sideboards here the coming weeks. So be on the lookout for that.
Assuming we can get our schedule together to stream something.
Oh yeah, we can get our schedule together. And just leaving you with a little something to think about. Just think about region locking. Think about what you want from each region. Don't think about what you can do for your region. Think about what your region can do for you. I'm turning it Ed Markey style back on them. But yeah, for Runeterra, I've been Grandmaster Dan.
I'm Adam Edelman Munoz.
And I'm Stan Jaruzelski.
And we'll still be those people next time, and we'll see you then.